Good evening and welcome to the Charter Township of Elmwood Planning Commission special meeting convened on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 7 p.m. Our location is the Elmwood Township Hall, 10090 East Lincoln Road, Traverse City, Michigan. Please stand and join me in reciting the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Chris Minkowski.
Here.
Doug Roberts.
Here.
Andrew Luda.
Here.
Rick Beckfeld.
Here.
Jeff April.
Here.
Jonah Kuzma.
Here.
Nate McDonald.
Very good. Everyone is present. We have a quorum and we can proceed. We are at item D, limited public comment only on the agenda items with no public hearing process. If you wish to make a public comment, please come to the podium and make your comment, and we are going to be timing comments at this section for 3 minutes. So I will open public comment at 7:01 p.m. If you wish to make a public comment, please come forward. Seeing no one coming forward for public comment, I will close public comment at 7:02 p.m. Item E, agenda modifications and approval. Commissioners, please look over the agenda, and if you feel as though we need to reorder things or add or subtract an item, please make a motion to that effect. Otherwise, the chair will entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda, approval of the agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have support. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The agenda is approved as presented. Item F, declaration of conflict of interest. Please review the remaining items on the agenda. And if you perceive that you have a conflict of interest with one or more of those, please state so at this time. Hearing nothing, we'll declare that there is no conflict of interest for any of the remaining agenda items. Item G, purpose of the special meeting. G sub A, the consent calendar. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Sarah or other staff regarding the information on the documents that we received?
I have a question for the Zoning Board of Appeals in April. Is that 250-foot setback? Or was that 25-foot?
Sorry, let me get there.
It was 250? Okay.
Yes. Did anybody want any other item kind of, put on the agenda for later? And then, that would go for the commission as well as members of the public. They have the ability to request that, an item be moved for later in the agenda.
I don't think we have.
Okay. Well, then, you might want to, accept a motion.
Yes. Looking for a motion to accept the consent calendar.
I would make a motion to accept the consent calendar as printed.
Second.
We have support. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The consent calendar is
Approved,
accepted.
received, and filed.
Yes. Thank you. We are now on to the minutes. We have.
No, that's all part of the consent calendar.
That's all part of the consent calendar. Very good. Okay, thank you. Very good. Okay, we are at item G, sub B, site plan review, SPR 2023-03, request by GM LLC regarding property at 10240 East Cherry Bend Road, parcel number 004-320-001-00 for site redevelopment project, which is a parking lot. Is there someone from the group that would like to offer an initial presentation?
My name is Scott Joswiak, project engineer for this project, and I'm representing Chris Millward and Eric Gruber. They're both owners of GM LLC and also the business that's in there, which is Blueprint Partners. I think a lot of you, everybody's pretty familiar with the site. So let me just get these out front. The site's located at Sylvia and Cherry Bend Road. It's the old Northwood Kitchen, which they're still a tenant in the building. And for years, it's been a beautiful looking building. Just the site has been just gravelled and asphalt and kind of a, no real definition to the site. So as part of a beautification project only, this isn't relative to a change of use or anything like that. The owners have recently just, kind of remodeled the interior of the building and are now looking to upgrade the site to make it look appealing and stuff. We've worked with the road commission, soil erosion, Sarah as well, on coming up with plans, and we actually came to the ZBA to get some variance requests, which are noted in your plans in the packet. So we got those almost a year ago, or about a year ago, and then since then we've been working with road commission and trying to resolve some discrepancies and decisions that we were trying to make with them. So, but the idea is to beautify the lot, kind of cordon off and make very distinct parking lots, and then turn the rest of the site and do a lot of landscaping and possibly put in a paver patio in the front. I kind of depicted that as being kind of a owner prescribed, just because it may take on a new shape once a landscape architect gets their hands on it. So, but again, it's trying to make the site more compliant than it was before, and I think we've demonstrated that. We're closing off an entrance on one of the entrances on Cherry Bend. We're sliding the other one further away from the intersection. We're getting rid of the parking that was all along the one side of the building that was, big gravel area, to make it more of a controlled environment for parking. So I'll just kind of walk through just a little bit here. Sorry, I brought both renditions here. So anyway, this is Cherry Bend Road and this is Sylvia. And Sylvia prior had a lot of access coming into the building on the east side. And so now we're going to take and put in one larger entrance that comes in, services the garage doors, but then also provides parking bays for some, off-street parking there. Currently, this is all asphalt. We're going to be removing all that and building a new parking lot over off the west end of the building. And so all the patrons here and here can go into the building, which the front of the building and the side of the building are both the accessible portions of the property. A little bit of a patio, as I was indicating, they're going to create some kind of landscape feature out in front, and what it's going to look like we don't know yet. But I mean that's kind of the idea, is that there'll be something out there. All our stormwater is handled via we've got a retention basin going in on that side of on the low side of the parking lot over here. And then we're putting in an underground system down through the middle of the property right here. And that's to service not only ours, but also picks up runoff from the road commission. And then there's an under drain coming from the building that'll drain into that as well. So we took a site that pretty much has zero of any of those elements. Good drainage, hard surface, poorly managed parking areas and stuff, and kind of put it back on paper the way it should be and the way it functions for the owners. And then obviously, exhibit is the green, and put a lot of green back on that property. Dumpster enclosure, there's gonna be just tote dumpsters, and those will be, just be held in the garage portion of the building, so we don't have any exterior receptacles like that. We're adding a couple of little landscaping elements at either end of our parking lot, but mostly we're protected with the, existing vegetation along both both sides. A little bit sparse right now, just as a growing season is occurring, but outside of that, just kind of leave it, I guess, if you guys have any questions.
Scott, I have one. Back to that one, the drainage for the Sylvia Street parking is just in the front yard there and around the proposed patio?
It's an underground
Oh, you're
stone
gonna-
and pipe, it's already in.
Okay.
Yeah, we put that in month ago.
Okay. Good.
It wasn't even in preparation for this plan, we just had to do something, because we were still making our way through some issues with the road commission, but.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
You were talking about stormwater retention on what would be the west side. Well, can you describe that a little bit? There's not too much of a description there.
I'm sorry if the line's a little faint there, but there's a retention basin on the west side of that parking lot.
Oh, ice?
Yeah, I apologize. Those blue lines are
Yes, they are.
a little tricky. I
Thank you.
apologize, I didn't see how that printed.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just add to that, if you look at sheet C1.3, again, it does show, the location of the basin, and then also, talks about, has some details on the stormwater infiltration basin.
And when you do snow removal, where would the snow be stored or placed or pushed to, or?
The west parking lot will probably just be pushed to the back, or into the retention basin. The one on the side lot, there is some room around the back side of the building to kind of nestle some snow in there, and then they can either truck it around, or
Okay.
there's a little more of a corridor on the back side there to be able to navigate.
So if I can, our ordinance actually prohibits snow removal from parking lot or parking area shall not be stored within the water's edge setback unless contained to the parking area.
Okay, we'll push it to the south,
Yep.
which
And
that's
to-
how I'd probably do it, right, Joe? There's plenty of room there.
And could we snow blow into the grass, to the landscape area, the grass area?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Because that, we actually are getting a bid from the snowplow company, they have a blower, so the snow blow instead of actually plow it all. Because that would be our preference, is to blow it and have that inch of ice on the whole parking lot all the way.
It just can't interfere with the clear visibility of traffic.
Yeah. That'd be helpful.
I figured as much, but it's a recommended condition. And that said, I guess it should be worth noting that this afternoon, we did receive a 3-page report from our fire chief. So I did provide that to, all of our commissioners as well as, our applicants. And then based on that, I did also prepare draft findings, to help guide you through discussion on whether or not the standards have been met. I'm not sure if we're at that point, I just wanted to review.
I'm just gonna take a minute to go through the chief's report here. other questions for the applicant before we start going through the standards? Thank you very much. So, we'll start with, excuse me, section 8.4. It's on the top of page 2. And it's titled Requirements for Site Plan Approval. And do any commissioners have concerns or questions about any of the subsections of section 8.4 and the information provided by the applicant? Sarah, on the plan, the blue line on the perimeter is essentially the lot line?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, the dark blue. And again, they did obtain a variance from the zoning board of appeals to allow parking within the front setback,
Okay.
as indicated, by the applicant, as well as it's listed on the first page of my staff report. And also the findings of fact decision that you had gotten prior to.
Anyone have any questions or concerns with 8.4 subsections 1 through 37?
There's some of them that say they're applicable, they're not, but they're not provided.
Not applicable, right?
No,
Can you give me a number?
21.
21,
It's
elevation
not-
drawings of typical proposed structures and accessory structures,
You're not-
not provided but not applicable to this application.
You're not worried about it? I know you were before, like, I'm trying to think of the one.
This is a
Massage.
this is a situation where this is a relatively flat lot. And I would note that the township has adopted a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that actually allows the commission the authority to waive certain standards if they're not, applicable, or, they, by waiving said standard, it doesn't impact, the community at large. In this situation, again, I think everybody is familiar with this lot. It is a very flat lot. If there was any type of elevations, yeah, I think, we didn't actually, Masonic Temple was able to proceed with just the dated site plan that they had.
And then you were building elevations and different stuff, I remember. Those
Yeah, those were building elevations. But yeah, the commission didn't require them to go out and provide additional contours to the land. And then the elevation drawings for the structure itself, again, that is not the proposed work at all. The proposed work is just the parking lot.
I don't see anything on there. It looks like it's all provided except for 6, the sealed condition. Number 6.
Yeah, the stamped plan.
And that is a recommended condition.
We have consensus, ultimate agreement that section 8.41 through 37 is complete with the exception of sub-item 6, which will be one of the conditions.
Yes.
Okay.
I-
Moving on to.
Sorry, I don't have this. I'm going through everything,
Oh,
and
sorry,
I don't
Chris, I
have,
didn't-
I'm like completely lost.
I'm so sorry. You want it? Nope, here you go.
Okay,
It was just attached.
thank you. I'm all set.
You're feel
Yeah.
comfortable proceeding? Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to section 8.5, review and approval for site plan review. B, standards for site plan approval.
If I may, I did provide you with an additional few
That's right,
pages
yes.
this
Thank you.
this afternoon with prepared, findings.
So,
So that's this.
I grabbed something too. I'll put it on the table.
I had hard copies available on the table. You can take this one. I have extra copies.
Thanks, Howard.
let's take just a couple of minutes to let you kind of glance at the first few standards.
I think it might be possible to begin going through the standards, and if the commission wants to take time when they get to a standard.
Section 8.5B sub 1.
That's been met.
Other commissioners?
I agree.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay, so that has been met. B sub 2.
Or potentially met.
Number 6.
You can wait until we get to B4.
Okay. B3.
Yes.
Yes,
B4. We have the fire chief's review, and he finds their plan acceptable. We have a application and permit from the Leelanau County Road Commission, soil erosion.
Chief Tampa did have a couple of recommendations, some 6 of 10 there on the new version that we had here on our desk about the dimensions and obstruction of fire apparatus access roads.
Oh, we got, yeah, I was just reviewing the documents that were in, so when we get to 6, we'll address that. But thank you for bringing that up. For the stormwater retention and dispersion, does DEQ permit that, or is that just the drain commission?
In this situation, it would be the drain commission.
Drain commission, okay.
And their permit, again, indicated that Eagle permit number not applicable.
Okay.
And that's why I recommended it as a draft finding.
Okay. 4. And the commissioners feel as though that standard has been met?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Any modifications to any findings, please let me know. And then, if I may, if you found that number 4 is met, that means you also found 8.52 is met.
8.52, yes.
Thank you for confirming.
8.56.
Did you do 8.55?
8.55.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was so tiny, I just whipped through it, excuse me. 8.55.
It's been met.
Yes.
So that has been met since there's no
Yes.
private road. Now, 8.56.
That's been met.
8.57.
Yes.
8.58.
Yes.
Yes.
8.59.
Yes.
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 8.510.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's a great plan. Having it better than the old one. Of course. Nice job.
8.511.
Yes.
Yes.
8.512.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
8.513.
Yes.
We will now need a motion to accept the proposed findings of fact.
I would make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and support to accept the findings of fact for the GM LLC SPR 2023-03 project at 10240 East Cherry Bend Road. Any further discussion? All those in favor of accepting the findings of fact signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The findings of fact are accepted. Now we move on to our decision regarding the proposed plan.
If I may, I would request the commission, consider an additional condition regarding, no snow storage is allowed within the 30-foot wetland setback. And by wetland setback, I do mean water's edge setback. Yes.
Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay, please add that as a condition. So we just have the two conditions right now, the stamped plan and the snow storage.
If I may, if you look at page 9 of 10 and 10 of 10, I do recommend a few different ones. So again, most of them are pretty standard, property owner is responsible for obtaining all other permits, done prior to obtaining a land use permit. Landscaping needs to, maintain and be maintained. The snow storage one, prior to issuance of a land use permit, plan set, so that's the seal. Project shall comply with all requirements of the zoning ordinance, so we'll change that date to 5/23/23. As-built are required, and then the two recommendations proposed by the fire chief.
I've been thinking about the snow storage one. That's, if you're snow blowing, that's almost impossible, if that's considered snow storage. If they're snow blowing it out there in that lawn, it's almost impossible to not put it within, especially they've got a retention pond that's acts as a area to collect water or snow. And I think all of that would be a fine area to put it, but if you're gonna snow blow, you're gonna blow it over there. There's just no way around it. I don't know how you can police it anyhow, but I don't see it as a real issue. Seeing as how the county plows the roads and plows it right into the creek, you'd think a private individual could snow blow and throw their parking lot snow in their yard and not have to be worried about whether it's too close to the creek or not. I mean, you do what you want, but I do a lot of snow removal and I see a lot of things that shouldn't happen, but I think that's tough to do. You that live along creeks know when you plow your drive, you're gonna put snow in the drainage ditch or the culvert, Maybe they don't have a problem with it, maybe it's fine for them, but I'd say that's a burden.
Well, I would note that it is a requirement for non-residential off-street parking, as stated in our zoning ordinance. I mean, if somebody is out there snow blowing and it's just like, I don't know, a few flakes, your zoning administrator is not gonna be out there issuing cease and desist and stop work orders and ticketing. However, if there is a giant, for example, with Tom, so they push all of their snow into the detention basins kind of within, right off of M22, and you see those giant piles, mounds of snow. If that is within the water's edge setback, you might get a letter, because that is a clear violation.
As much water as there is in the Growthville area, and as much businesses that we have, I don't know how you could ever keep people from pushing snow towards, making piles in those areas, but maybe it's something we should look at within the ordinance, not haggle about it right now.
Mhm.
It seems how they're gonna snow blow up, they're not gonna make piles, but they are gonna put snow up there. There's no question.
And possibly when they are doing the snow blowing, they could direct as much of the flow as possible away from the water's edge into the side yard. Because if I recall, there's a fair amount of area between the back of the building and some of the trees that start to line the creek. It seems to me there's about maybe 35 or 40 feet of the creek from the road right away going south that doesn't have immediate vegetation, and then it gets fairly heavily covered. But yeah, I think we can discuss that particular ordinance at another time. It's a worthy consideration. Any other questions, or is anyone needing additional information before we proceed with the decision?
I'll make a motion to approve with the stated conditions.
We have two options. We're looking at, you're looking at option one.
Okay.
And if we can change the wording, light fabrication use to parking lot, sorry, this is a template that I use.
Okay. So light fabrication is struck and parking lot is inserted. Okay.
So-
You were making a motion for option one?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, for approval. Would you like me to read the one that's stated there?
Please.
Okay. I make a motion that based on the findings of fact previously adopted by the applicant's site plan for parking lot on the property described in a decision order is here, oh wait, no. A motion to
Is hereby approved.
hereby approved, subject to the following conditions that were stated
As previously discussed.
I'll second that.
Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The motion is carried, the decision is in favor of the project. Thank you very much, and good luck with your project.
Nice job on the plan, that looks good, I like it. I get rid of that sea of parking in front, gives you a little green space. Good job.
We're trying to get it done.
Good, I'm excited for it.
I'll finalize it and get you a formal decision.
Moving on to G, sub C, introduction, PC 2017-04-17, a zoning ordinance amendment request submitted by John Gallagher Jr. to reintroduce special event facilities as a special use within the AR zoning district. So, is there someone who is going to present?
Good evening, Fred Campbell, 225 East 16th Street. Here tonight with the two John Gallaghers separated by a rose. Let me start by a short history lesson because it warrants a history lesson. Bringman Brothers Winery was the first winery or the first facility in Elmwood Township to receive a event center special use permit. The Bringman Brothers, when they proposed the winery, there was no ordinance, there was no language in the ordinance that allowed Bringman Brothers to do what they wanted to do. Elmwood Township at the time basically put their nose to the grindstone and created an ordinance that was tied to the winery. And it was basically wine-related activities. Subsequent to that, the wedding venue craze became all over northern Michigan. Every township was adopting ordinances. As architects, we were faced with the issue of we're taking a barn that was used for agriculture, converting it into an assembly usage that doesn't meet the code. It doesn't meet the energy code, it doesn't meet the exiting code, doesn't meet a lot of codes. So the issues were resolved with the building departments to treat the barns as temporary 6-month structures that are basically non-heated and therefore are exempt from barrier-free issues, public toilet issues, and that is how the wedding venues popped up all over northern Michigan. Elmwood Township was presented in 2018 with 2 applications for event centers. One was for the Gallaghers, and one was for Frank Nover and Nover Farms. The Nover Farms submission was very controversial because it's located in a residential area. All of the houses face onto the lake. All the houses are fairly expensive houses, and an organization was formed to basically fight the Nover submission. On the other hand, the Gallagher Farms submission was the exact opposite. I brought a board from one of the original presentations. This is Lincoln Road. This is the area where the wedding event center was proposed. The highlighted violet are the houses that are within this area. The wedding tents are placed here. The noise is directed there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses is all that was basically affected, which allowed Gallagher's to be approved and Nover to be denied. Upon the denial of Nover, he took it to court, and I don't want to say the court, that he won the court case, because I don't think anybody won the court case, because that's why we're here tonight. The court found in favor of Nover and allowed him to have the activities that he had asked for. The township board then basically asked the planning commission to amend the ordinance and delete the event center from the zoning ordinance. The Gallaghers went and built a gazebo. The gazebo was built, and I got a call from Sarah and a call from Amber from building department saying, we have an existing non-conforming use that can't be expanded. And that's the situation that we're in today. We were approved under an ordinance, and we agreed to abide by all of those restrictions or all of the items that you would want to see in an event center. As a result of the elimination of the verbiage, the center cannot expand in any fashion. Peter Wendell, I had 2 conversations with Mr. Wendell when this first came about. He cited to me a court case, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't claim to know anything about it, but he cited an example of a junkyard that was found to be an existing non-conforming, and basically the court found that you have a junkyard, there's your use. How do you know whether it's expanded or not? Somebody threw another piece of paper on the ground or brought another car in, it's still a junkyard. He also cited a situation where, or I brought it up to him, in the impact assessment statement that we submitted for approval, we make reference to a future septic field. As the Gallaghers are in business and they are starting like any small business does, they don't have the money to just buy everything and pay for everything immediately. So this was planned to be something that was expanded. I have a model of the DH Day barn, and that was their original concept, was to basically build the DH Day barn on their property. In the impact assessment statement, there's reference to a future septic field. We have approval to do a wedding event center. My question to Mr. Wendell was, are we allowed to put the septic field in? Because if I can't expand the non-conforming, but I got approval for it as a future in writing. Does that allow me to do that? He instructed us to contact the township. We wrote a letter to Mr. Shaw in February of 2022, basically citing what I just reiterated and said, what are the options that are available to us to make this a conforming, the Gallaghers want this to be a conforming condition. I cited the fact that agricultural is one way of doing it, treated as an agricultural use that isn't subject to the police power of the ordinance. I cited the fact that either this month or next month, I am coming in front of Sarah to bring a distillery for the Gallagher Farms. Tie it to the distillery ordinance, much like the winery ordinance was originally done for Bregman Brothers. We sat down with Jeff and with Sarah, and I think that was your first week or maybe second week that you were here, and said, what do we do? Sarah's recommendation was a text amendment to the existing ordinance. In June of 2022, we basically resubmitted the exact ordinance that was repealed and said, we're happy to live with that because that's what we were approved under. An attorney reviewed that, and basically his comments, Mr. Weirda's comments, had to do with the fact that many of the issues that were brought up during the lawsuit needed to be resolved. When we met, I indicated, basically Sarah's recommendation was we come up with a text amendment. My response was, am I really the guy that needs to do this? Because I'm an architect, I'm not a planner. I can do it. I'd be happy to do it, but I'm going to look at it from the Gallagher's point of view rather than the township's point of view. There has been a recent letter that was received from a different attorney, and basically his review of the proposed text amendment states what I'm stating right now. It's not organized the way we would organize it. It doesn't appeal to this or that or the other thing. So part of the reason for being here tonight is to say, how do we move this along? What are the avenues? We would be happy to hire a consultant, somebody that is more versed in the planning end of things, to organize. One of the criticisms was that the organization, the overall outline of the ordinance wasn't as he specified. We'd be happy to have them go through and do that based on his outline. My fear is that we spend that time, and we've now worked on this since February of 2022, that we're no farther ahead today than we were back there. So I'm saying, what can we do? I can't think of a better site. How many people have been to the Gallagher Farm? I can't think of a better place that's more secluded, that gives a better representation of northern Michigan than the Gallagher Farm Wedding Event Center. And we're here today stating we're not tearing the trees down, we're not farming, we're not farming, we are an active farm, we will continue farming, structures that we want to build them to look like barns. I use the D.H. Day barn as an example. The proposed distillery that's coming in is a barn, timber frame structure, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to meet the ordinance. We want to do the wedding events. We want to do a winery. We need to resolve the issue of the gazebo. And I would welcome opinions and recommendations as to how we move this down the field.
Thank you. In our current ordinance, we do not have any events in the ag.
In the ag district,
In the
conference
ag.
centers and banquet halls or banquet facilities aren't allowed use under a special use permit within the general commercial zoning district. So
Okay.
it is an allowed use.
And to proceed to change that definition and the ordinance, essentially, we don't have a zoning map up here, but a majority of Elmwood Township is green, meaning it's zoned agricultural. So basically, if something like this were to go through, everything that is green could potentially apply, and if they met the tenets of the ordinance, be granted a permission to develop a venue or site or.
Yes. Unless it's the commission restricts it, limits it, puts, additional standards and requirements, which is one of the recommendations that council had originally recommended. It's one of those things where, I worked with the Gallaghers, we all spent a lot of time, working it. Like, the text that's before you guys now, we went down a different path and prepared a pastoral event ordinance, and, but then that wasn't what was ultimately, again, submitted. Like, the language changed again. So what our attorney has essentially recommends that the commission takes and has a discussion on whether or not this use should be allowed in the ag district. And if the commission wants to see that use within the ag district, what type of regulations should be in place? Because again, they do not recommend moving forward with the language as drafted.
Based on this, don't we want to see further site plan review as well?
I'm not sure if site plan review would be, this is a text amendment.
Yeah, before we even get to that, we need to figure
Yeah,
out
we'd have to have language
of
of
what
it.
use it. So, Sarah, can I, Rick, if I might?
Please.
Why the impasse? Like, you were going one route but not another route? Did they just wanted to go a different direction? It sounds like you were making progress, but then the progress was delayed.
Well, so when I first was working, when I got the application, it was like, well, my first concern was past situations with the township and this language. So it's at minimum, this needs to go to Weirda, who is the one who did defend the township. So it went to Weirda. He presented a memo saying that, the text that was prepared is, only a few modifications were changed. Do not move forward with the text as presented. That kind of went back, and then, the Gallaghers reworked it. I thought it did address a lot of what was raised in the complaint. We did send it to, the attorney at that time, but again, that has changed. Our Weirda is a special attorney. He is not our usual attorney. We use, Wendling or Brian Graham. Brian Graham will be working with us in the future on any application that we receive, so that's why I wanted to send the language to him. When he reviewed it, he did not like the way that it was organized, and his first concern, his primary concern, if you will, I'm gonna use my pun because I always do, his primary concern was, this is a primary use of a parcel, so why are you calling it accessory? Call it what it is, and regulate it accordingly, if you want to proceed down that path. So again, that all kind of feeds into the history, but it's just what is important, and what, you know, the commission should discuss is, should this use be allowed within the ag district? And again, if so, what type of regulations?
So, for sake of discussion, if the commission were to proceed, we could put a requirement in the ordinance that in order for a venue like this to occur, it has to be on, like, for instance, like a minimum of a 40-acre parcel. Or is that?
Generally, yes, but at the same time, when making those kind of regulations, you can't just pull a number out of anywhere. Like, it should be based on something. So it's just, okay, if we want to make sure that this use, I mean, like, although it's a primary use of the parcel, we want to make sure that, you know, the primary use, like, there's an active agricultural enterprise that is occurring on site, that, you know, the farm is, you know, at least makes up 50% of the parcel. That would be like a more understanding, like, regulation. You know, minimizing. So with wine tasting rooms and distillery tasting rooms, we have a maximum size of 2,000 square feet, you know, because again, we don't want that use overtaking the parcel. So, you know, you should kind of discuss, like, what are the potential impacts and how do we resolve those potential impacts? That's how I would look at it.
Right, the original use could be subordinate, like I was saying, to the new use, right? I mean,
Yeah, but again, call it what it is, because
Right.
it's just, if you're having, you know, a commercial event that's gonna have 200 people on site, I mean, weddings, everyone I know is having at least 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 weddings.
Right.
And that's a lot of income. That's not, you know, primary, because what was in our previous zoning ordinances, they had to submit all of this financial information in order for the commission to determine if it was accessory or not. No, that's too convoluted. Just, you know, let's, you know, talk about what you want, if you want, and then, you know, regulate it accordingly.
So, ideally, if we were to proceed, the ordinance would contain clear language, conditions that would clearly outline, let's say, the number of events, the time they start and end, considerations for parking, waste disposal, things like that.
A lot of that is already in the text.
Okay.
Rick, I think you mentioned, if I might again, you know, you piped up in the beginning and said that, you know, the amount of land available for this potential use is significant. So I think that's probably the first discussion is, you know, originally this came out for a reason, right? So, special events were struck for a reason.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I've not been to the Gallagher location. I've been to other outdoor events in other parts, and they're very nice and very enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a great farm. We go there, our kids love it. It's
I guess, what are people thinking about potentially opening up all of the ag land to potential event spaces? I'm not saying that, you know, if this hit the books, that we'd have people coming in right and left to get approval for this, but one of the things to consider is just the growth in this area. As an example, we were in Brooklyn, New York, and the local TV station was running Pure Michigan with Traverse City and Sleeping Bear Dunes. So I mean, it's, you know, words out that Michigan's a nice place to be. I guess, you know, it's kind of like I don't know, I'm going to use a movie reference, Field of Dreams. You know, if you build it, they're going to come.
Well, I think the first thing we're gonna have to look at is, do we wanna do it? Because then we're gonna have to get into it. And the second thing is, we don't wanna make the mistakes that allowed a lawsuit as So it has to be responsive. If we do it, it has to be responsive to the lawsuit. And the third thing is, how are we gonna regulate the proliferation of it, if that's going to happen? I mean, one of the questions I had, and I'm gonna ask it of Sarah, but that's probably, this is not probably where I'm gonna get the answer. Is the demand for these types of things expanding? I mean, are more people looking for special event facilities to have weddings or things like that?
The calls that I've received to the office are limited at best. The only notable thing is, again, the Gallaghers came in when I first started asking to expand. And I went through the record and was like, well, Capriva's already said, no, it can't. You know, options are to not expand or to amend the ordinance.
The other question that comes to my mind, is all that green in the Elmwood Township that is ag land. We need to support the ag land. We need to support those people. I mean, they're our public. And is this something that would be helpful in their support, in supporting them? Because our climate is changing, our ag is changing. The farm at which my wife volunteers, and I hope that doesn't bring in a conflict of interest, has not been able to move out into the fields yet because of the vicissitudes of the weather at this particular time. I mean, these things come into play, but it all comes back to, do we want to do it, and then how do we regulate it?
And, I mean, something like this kind of falls under the value-added umbrella to a certain degree. I mean, when I think of like value-added for ag, I think of like the fall pumpkin patch or the cut your own flowers kind of a thing. While, that might be maybe 5% of the area of the farm, and the rest of it's in livestock or row crops or fruit. I don't know, Doug raises a number of good points. I guess the bottom line question is this something we feel would be a benefit to Elmwood Township?
I think that this is something that we could probably spend a significant amount of time with. Would it be possible to do some type of workshop meeting where we can specifically talk about this type of amendment or a text amendment to that ordinance?
That is a possibility. I know that in previous developments within the ag district, we've sort of cautioned that, do we want ag to become more commercialized? And I think that's, part of this, because for a successful venue, you're gonna have to, get the word out, because word's gonna spread by word of mouth, and, people are gonna be online, and if it's a beautiful location, people are going to go there. I guess I would, looking at my murky crystal ball, I would hate to have somebody give up agriculture to devote all of their property to various venues. You'd have your wedding venue, you'd have your kids' party venue, and you'd have the, family reunion venue. I think there has to be some type of active production somewhere on the farm. And I know that you can have a field like be fallow for years, letting the soil recover. I also know that a lot of people have a lot of land with trees on it, and they're just letting the trees get bigger so that they log them. So, I mean, I think we have to have, you know, some consideration for, you know, active farming. Because I guess what I would be, I wouldn't want to see is to have some investment group come and swoop up a bunch of our ag land and just put in venue after venue after venue, and if there's no requirement for active agricultural production.
You can cover that kind of thing by a percent of the land that is tilled, or the percent of the land that is orchard. That gets into, if we're gonna do it, then that's the proliferation part of it, but you can do that with percents. I think, now, where I'm having a problem with this, frankly, is I don't know what the Nova decision was. I don't know, certain of the things violated their it was federal court, so.
I just need to caution everybody about discussing that particular case, because if we were gonna go into more detail, we would have need to essentially notice it and let the party know that would be under discussion. It's just one of those delicate lines we have to.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, no, no, that's fine. It was just brought to my attention earlier that we have to be very, very cautious on that, and if.
It's one of those things where,
Is
again,
the
that's
decision-
why,
Is the decision public?
it can be made available to the commissioners, yes.
It's not under seal.
I do not believe so.
Okay.
I was able to release the complaint to the Gallaghers. We were working on the text. And again, I mean, like, I would agree that, like, whatever language, again, if the township does want to go down this road, any final language needs to get the seal of approval from the township attorney. It would go through it with a fine-tooth comb versus what the township, yeah.
Rick, if I might. This special event was approved under the old, correct? So they're already in use of the special event.
Right, correct.
What if we looked at possibly, I know it's been taken out, they're already conforming to the amount of use, the noise, the lighting, all of that. What about having them come with their idea? Like, I didn't realize they were going to do a barn. I mean, that's agricultural in itself. Coming to us with the plan, showing us what it is, and then deciding whether it's, I mean, part of what it used to be. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry,
You
go
can't
ahead.
deviate from the existing, like, footprint or from what's existing or outlaid from the original.
But they
But I
weren't
think she's
under
saying
that.
make that as part of the,
I mean, their
As
their
part of-
plan was to have it as what we had it in the ordinance prior. We took it out. We took the rug underneath their feet. Okay? So they're stuck with a tent on the top of their hill. Now, if we looked at it from that perspective, they already had the right to do it and under the ordinance that we used to have. If they continued it, because they already have the special use permit, I know that we can't go backward, and I'm trying to figure out how I can say this without bringing a bunch of text back into this, but if we could look at it as it's under agricultural, what is the site plan, what is, what does the future use look like? Where does it end, so to speak? Where are we going to be done?
if I could, it be an item in the text amendment that says in order to be awarded a special use permit, enhance the agricultural aspect of the land, either through buildings, through plantings, through whatever. So I'm saying I think we can get something like that to, what you're trying to do is limit the ability for everybody to do anything they want. So that would just be another thing that you could further limit the playing field, so to speak.
I guess, again, a change for one is a change for all, right? But it's like, back to the original question, chicken and egg, it's like, do you want to have it for an allowed use or not?
But they had an allowed use.
I understand.
In,
I understand, it was, I get it, I get your point.
Sir.
The problem is, you just can't, you can't just change for one though, right? I mean, that's half the problem. Do we straw poll this and ask a no, a yes with, should we talk about different stipulations, and which is gonna be, you know, we're gonna need some.
I mean, in order to develop a text amendment, it's going to take a fair amount of work. And if there is not the desire by the commission to proceed with something like that, we need to make that known now rather than go through hours and hours of work and development and
Another 6 months of
and get
text.
to the final point saying, yeah, I guess we don't want to, I guess I mean, I see, personally, I see value in something like that, but I also, my concern is that I would hate to see people abandon agriculture to use their property for weddings and family reunions. I think that the agriculture is a rich heritage in our township. Our master plan, current master plan talks about maintaining the agricultural heritage and image of our township. And probably umpteen years ago, if somebody had a wedding on their farm, it was a family wedding, and all the relatives came and they, you know, moved the equipment out of the shed, and that's where they had it. But it was just, you know, it was one and done. So what do you, I can do kind of a straw poll to see if it's something you want to proceed with, if you're comfortable with that.
Can I just ask another question? I know we've kind of discussed at length farmland for the use of farmland, several times. It's come up, I can't point to all the instances, but can I put you on the spot and
Oh,
what do you think is
well, it's
being the,
it's getting tougher and tougher to be cherry farmer.
right?
Everybody
I agree, and that's the other problem is,
And so with that in mind, it's, if you can diversify or if you can sell your product alongside the road or whatever, that all benefits you as a farmer. But cherry farming it's tough because we're stuck in a world economy, and when other countries dump their cherries on us, our cherries aren't worth anything, and they sit in the freezer for years and years, and makes it tough to farm. Does that mean that our farms should all change to event centers, or that they will? I don't think so. I know the question was asked of Sarah earlier, is this an expanding thing? I think the Gallaghers would tell you, yes, that's why they're here. I know Jacob's Corn Maze has done some immense expansion.
right, it's significant.
So is it on the increase? Yes. Do we want to limit it? I think we do. I think we need to. I think if we're gonna look at this, you asked my opinion, if we wanna look at it, we need to make sure we have the right limitations in place. I think the Gallaghers have a very unique piece of property in the township. They have a very substantial piece of ground that works well for this. So I think, there's a lot of things to look at to just change the ordinance. I know we went through considerable discussion, both when the Bergman brothers came in and when we changed the ordinance recently to disallow it. And to waver back and forth is not good either. We have to decide whether we're gonna allow these things or not allow them and have the right restriction on it. Do I think we can do it here tonight? No. Do I think it's gonna take, if we're gonna do it, it's gonna take some time to get it right. We thought we had it right twice before, and we're gonna do it again. Right? Does that sound?
Are we really the body that should determine whether we pursue this or not?
We would.
Or do we have tools that would help us pursue it if we are? I mean, the real, as you said, the real question is, do we do it or not do it? Because why would we expend all the energy and have other people expend all the energy to do it unless we commit to it or not?
Well, if we look at the changing, I guess, face of agriculture, for a young person to buy land and start a farm today, I don't think there's enough money in all the banks in Traverse City for them to do that because it's tremendously expensive. The family farm aside is the only thing standing against corporate farms. And in just looking at the value added aspect to helping the farmers maintain their agricultural traditions. I mean, we've got the farm markets, which is an allowed use and help on. We've had some other types of activities go in. I guess. Well, Sarah mentioned that there hasn't been a lot of interest at this point, but since we have an active venue that was approved under a previous ordinance, I think we have to give some consideration to that. And I think, as Jeff pointed out, we don't want people to abandon agriculture or commercialize it. I mean, I wouldn't want to see somebody put in this massive winery and distillery and have like 9 acres of grapes. I think you'd have to have, so we'd have to figure out some kind, if we go ahead with this, I think we'd have to look at some kind of condition in the language that says in order for this to be approved, you've got to meet this. And I think if we're wondering about what percentage of their land is actually in production, I think I know a family friend of ours would always kind of gripe about having to get their information together to send to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they had to list the acreage, the types of crops that were planted, the projected yield, actual yield. And is that still, you've got to do that today? Okay. So I mean, that's a set of data that's readily available to, that the applicant could present. I mean, honestly, my thinking has changed a little bit, because initially, when I was thinking about maintaining agricultural heritage, I said, farms are for growing things, but, in hearing Jeff's comments, how cherry farming's changed, I think it's just, personally, I think it's a crime when a farmer, harvests their cherries and just dumps them in the field for compost, because there's no processor that'll take them. So in that case, that they've spent a lot of money and they've yielded nothing. So I guess I'm doing kind of a reverse of what I originally thought, and I think that it would be worthy of consideration to look at developing language in an ordinance that would carefully control the event centers in agricultural land. And I know that we're not in the area of language development at this point, but I think I would strenuously encourage that there would have to be some meaningful production or development or whatever on the land. I don't know, I'm kind of struggling with it because I originally was going to say, no, I don't think we should do it because, farms are farms. But, I mean, hearing Jeff talk about being a cherry farmer is difficult. I know that commodity prices, I know people that are dairy farmers and, they're really concerned about the price of their products. So I guess if there's a way that the farmers can be assisted with a value-added opportunity on their farm, it should consider it. So I hope I'm making sense. But I really, I'll spend some more time thinking about this, but I think it's something that would be beneficial to have us spend some time on.
I agree.
Yeah, going back and forth, I think there's two things that are coming up for me, and one is just the vast amount of ag land. And, not all of it's active by any means, and if you're talking about incorporating like the active component into it, then of course, that will limit that a bit. Then also the consistency of like how we've approached other things. So I know that things have been brought up in the last couple of years of like people having a couple different dwellings on a plot to be able to have like a farm experience, to be able to go stay out at a farm that isn't like a bed and breakfast. And I understand that's an ADU and, we don't allow that, but we kind of shot that down with the idea of we don't want to make it into like a commercial business. So that I'm just trying to kind of run through some things that we've talked about over the last couple years that kind of align with like that value added part where people were just inquiring about that and kind of just going back to, keeping it ag land.
Other thoughts?
Does anybody know off the top of their head what percentage of the township is under ag rural? Isn't it like 2/3?
I think it's about almost 60%.
Right.
I don't,
If I remember back, just looking at
Yeah,
the
'cause
master
I
plan thing we were looking at, like
it's more than half, yeah.
it's like 68% or
Yeah.
something.
What is it?
I don't have an exact percentage. I was going to attempt to load ArcGIS, but we'll be here for another 2 hours, so I'm not going to try that.
Yeah, one time Sarah Capri to get that information.
But you're looking at, you need to look at two different numbers. If you add the ag component to it, there's a lot of ag land, and I'll agree with that, but John, how many farmers are left in the township? Are there 20? No, I don't think there are.
Well, you got the 5 acre guys that, there's some guys.
True farmers, how many
Oh,
farmers?
true
are left?
farmers?
Yeah, there's not that many. So if you add that ag component into whatever you're doing somehow, then it takes that percentage of land, that 68% or whatever you're talking about as ag, and it reduces it way down to 10% or less. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you look at an ordinance and you're looking at doing this, it has to have a true ag component. And I would say, if anybody needs it, the Gallaghers certainly do, like Jacob's Corn Maze.
Right.
And they kind of grow corn so they can have a
Yeah.
So can I pipe in for a second?
Yeah, pull.
If I might?
Yeah.
So let me play devil's advocate then. So if there's not a lot of producing farmers left, right? If there's a lot of ag available land, is it because they're struggling and they can't produce anymore, or farming is just not for them any longer? You know, should those people necessarily be,
No,
you know,
most of that land is not ag. I mean, it never produced anything.
Okay.
Woods. Well, there's not good flat ground. Even my ground is too darn hilly to farm, but I do it anyhow. So most of it's either not good soils, too hilly. So the.
do you see what I was
it's-
getting at though? Is like,
it-
are we gonna exclude people because they don't farm though? I mean, is that fair? Is
I,
that?
I think that's what we
I
have.
think if we're looking at this as a value-added component to active agriculture, then just by that definition, you would be excluding people that came up and, maybe they inherited their grandfather's 80 acres and they come up and they go deer hunting in the fall and mushrooming in the spring, and that's the only activity on that, and maybe they have leased a couple of fields for hay. I mean, you know, they're, I guess in its mildest sense, it's, if they're a hay farmer, that would meet that, but if they just have if they just bought a 20 or 40 acre chunk of land that's zoned agricultural and they build a house on it, you know, unless they've got, you know, crops in the ground or livestock or something that would let the unfamiliar observer take a look and say, yeah, this is a farm, this is an active farm, versus this is a great big bunch of property with nothing going on.
It's, if you want to move forward with this, if you decide to, it's nothing we're going to decide tonight.
Oh, no, I did this.
But I think you can make the decision whether we look at it, and, you know, it would make it a possibility for the Gallaghers, at least if we said we were going to review it and look at it as a possibility for production agriculture, to give them some relief, one way, shape, form, or another. But I think with that, it gives us the opportunity to look at other situations like boomers. So if I have a few cows, can I put up an ice cream shop? I mean, you have to see what you really want out of your ag community. And so you can look at those examples and see if that's what you're looking for. But I think you were on the right approach earlier. Is this something we want to address, something we want to look at, or not? And I think that's a decision of each member in the board. Do you think it's worthwhile looking at?
Doug?
From what you were saying, I have another comment on that if we need to caution on the other side too. I mean, the Gallaghers have by their own acknowledgement, a unique piece of property. I mean, it's really suited for what they want to do. My guess is there aren't that many similarly situated pieces of property in our township, but there may be some, and they deserve the same, you know, while we want to restrict the spread of this, we also need to make it available where it is needed, or, you know, so that's the other component of if we determine to do it.
I agree, Doug, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, is like, be careful of excluding, you know, when, you know, if we're gonna pick this up, to be thoughtful about conditions and, you know, the stipulations for what you would wanna lay out. But I think we're approaching, right? I mean, I don't think any of us are heard no.
So, I can do a straw poll, or I can just ask for consensus. Is it the wish of the commission to proceed with development of language for an ordinance allowing events to occur in the ag district?
I'm in, but we need a lot of help.
Yes.
I agree, same as
Okay.
Todd.
I think so too.
Okay.
I think we've done this a couple of times, and we thought we've had it right both times, or we're going to adopt the ordinance, and now we're here looking at it again. And so we have to make sure we're not just waffling all the time.
Right, right.
Yeah, I agree with that. The fact that it's been done a couple of times and nothing has stuck,
Yeah.
it gives me some apprehension of, you know, are we do we have all the tools we need to be able to like move forward? And what, if we don't, what are those tools we
Yeah.
need?
Yeah, I did before I came tonight, I did a rescan of MSU's site, and most of the stuff I found on value-added agriculture was like, you know, pumpkin patches, fruit stands, and I didn't have enough time to do a deeper dive, but I think we would need to know who to ask for the additional help, because this is, with the level of activity in the township currently, to pull Sarah too far off of what you already have.
Well, it's one of those things where, again, like, I did spend a lot of time on it, and then that language changed, which again, I mean, they're the applicants, they can change language at any
Yeah.
time, they can move it before the planning commission at any time,
Right.
but it's just like, it's just before, you know, staff and/or, and council and possibly an outside person comes in and reworks the language. You know, I think it's kind of important to fully understand why is it needed and why don't we want it everywhere, because that kind of goes into like what should we be regulating and how we should be regulating it. I mean, so obviously farm, value added, there needs to be an active farm there. I mean, it sounds like we want to restrict hobby farms, but at the same time, I would urge, we don't want to fully be exclusionary with any regulations that we are enacting. But why don't we want it everywhere? I think that's kind of important. If we want to like understand, like protect vistas and ridge lines, I mean, that kind of goes against, I mean, again, it's a beautiful piece of property, but I mean, you need to find what you want to protect. And then that will help staff get examples from other ordinances and about what we should enact and how other people have, but again, understanding what Elmwood Township wants and needs. And that is the direction that I need from you guys, because again,
Is this something we need to schedule like a workshop meeting for, so we can have this deep discussion?
we could do that.
Because, you know, we could go on until the wee hours of the morning and probably not have enough info to proceed.
Everybody looked at the clock.
I know, I'm not gonna keep you here until, I was gonna say until Johnny Carson's on, but no.
Tell Gary.
Like, I guess if I may, I mean, again, it's important to note that we do have, you know, a text amendment application, so it's just, you know, if the planning commission, like, wants to move forward with it, I mean, again, it's understanding, the applicant needs to understand they wouldn't be moving forward with the text as presented, so the applicant would essentially have to agree to allow, you know, staff to work on X, Y, and Z, and then move forward, or if the applicant wants to move forward with the text as presented, the planning commission can, you know, act accordingly, I mean, and it follows that text amendment request. Because, I mean, but what I've heard from tonight is the commission wants to proceed with some sort of language.
Yes.
So that wouldn't be withdrawing the
I guess if-
application, but that is another option.
I guess if the applicant is comfortable with the direction we want to go, we will, you know, work on developing the language. Or we can proceed with, you know, we can proceed with the documents that we have.
But also understanding that any text amendment, you know, it's, the planning commission recommends approval or doesn't recommend approval. It's ultimately the township board who makes
Right.
that decision.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, again, like, we've been back and forth a lot, and it's just, I don't want it to get to that situation where, okay, we spend all of this time and energy on it, and then the board votes us down. I would imagine that, you know, by the time it would get to that point, we'd have, you know, council's seal of approval, so it wouldn't, that wouldn't happen, but, you know, that is always an outcome that is possible.
So what kind of time frame are you thinking to rewrite some type of language?
well, without guidance from the commission?
First we need to.
Yeah, we've got to figure out what we want. We have some proposed language that our council has drawn caution to. So I think we would have to come up with the concepts that we want to see fleshed out in terms of an ordinance, and make sure that it is something that is not patently exclusionary, but would allow people that meet the conditions in the ordinance to apply and demonstrate that they can meet the conditions and be granted approval for event centers on active agricultural land.
It's definitive, not vague, and the regulations that would be imposed would be in place to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community, so noise, traffic.
So,
So we're not gonna move forward with the applicant's text
Well, I think
proposal
we-
in it?
I think we've got to
As written,
either
correct?
approve it or deny
Right.
it,
So,
or something.
I'm sorry, what?
We need to either approve or deny the text that's presented before us, because that's their proposal. So we need to do something with that proposal, correct?
Or another option is to, with the applicant's
Postpone.
permission, postpone deliberations, while, council and staff work forward with language. And I would recommend, some sort of meeting that the commission, be involved in this process and talk about the regulations that they want to see, because I didn't get that at all tonight. What I got was, we want to protect, our farmland. But the how-to has not come up at all.
yeah, I think we need to do our due
Yeah.
diligence to think about how we actually
Mhm.
want that to look, right? Instead of just rattling off stuff.
Yeah.
I think we need to do it and do it right, so there's no bad experience at the end. Just, so,
Is that because only you and I are old enough to remember Woodstock?
probably, yes.
Like the bird with Snoopy?
Oh, kids. Okay.
Go
I
back,
don't
read
believe
your
that would be
history.
allowed under the special event facility, because I
Okay.
don't
Pardon?
believe music can be the primary use of the
We'll
facility.
have to convene a special meeting to have our, reminisce our Woodstock memories, so, I guess, so, the next step, if the applicant is agreeable, we would,
Well, those are the three options, so, how would you guys like us to proceed?
Fred, what-
Suggesting we postpone till we can meet the lawyer, Mr. Grams.
And then-
that's, yes, I think that's the,
If I could ask a couple questions. So is it the planning commission's wish to create an ordinance as a planning commission, or is the onus still on us as the applicant? Because if it's on us, I want to ask the question, what do we need to do to further it? The one is to put it into the perspective that the last attorney set up the formula for. My recommendation to the Gallaghers is hire somebody that's better versed at it than I am and if we're going to have a special meeting where everybody's going to voice what should be in that ordinance, whether it includes the planning commission and the town board or whoever, I'd like to have that person here to incorporate all of that at the same time. And that's where, if we're going to do it, I want that person to be here. If you're going to do it, then I don't really have a say in it.
This is one of those things where there will be a significant cost to the township if we take the language on, which is, why, part of my understanding why the township hasn't since it was removed at the beginning of 2020, before COVID. So I don't necessarily want to put the onus on the Gallaghers, because of course, when they're talking about a text amendment, they're just thinking about their site, which is important,
so,
but,
yeah.
I mean, right. So it's one of those things where, I mean, the township can take it on, but I will need to sit down with the supervisor again and talk about the money the township wants to invest into this. Because it cannot be done solely in-house. Our attorney is going to need to be heavily utilized, and there's a cost to that. I did have that preliminary conversation with them, because I didn't want the Gallaghers to have to keep on paying into escrow. So we got to a certain point in time where they're no longer paying into escrow, that's fine. But again, now that we understand that the planning commission does want to see this text move forward, we're expecting, a certain time frame, a certain number of meetings, and, get a, rough kind of cost estimate to the township board and see if that's something they want to, okay. I feel like I kind of walked around all of that. My
So,
mind is kind of
can I ask
mush
you a
right
question,
now.
Sarah?
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
would it be better for everybody, township, us, to try and get a workshop together where we can all come prepared and have points that we want to address within that, and then, then Mr. Graham can maybe take that and apply that, or at least look at our recommendations or our thoughts and see how that applies to a text.
Yep,
draft.
and staff can supply that, and,
Yeah, I mean,
by
'cause
that
what if-
time I can
If
have
we
a
don't come
rough
up with a
estimate.
bunch of solid stuff and maybe we're at an impasse ourselves, I mean, why put the cart before the horse?
I think it would be prudent for the commission to develop some concepts that they feel should be in an ordinance, so upon successful completion of the ordinance, it can be successfully implemented, monitored, and be a benefit to the township and the residents of the township that wish to take advantage of the conditions identified in that in the ordinance, so. I guess Jeff mentioned we need to get some help and sort of Doug, where, aside from council, what would be resources that we should look at?
I know the township has a contract with an individual at Beckett and Rader.
Okay,
So that might be utilized.
okay. So do we need a motion to proceed with the development, or are we sufficiently in consensus that we?
Well, again, I mean, I just want to get confirmation from the applicant that they are all right with, the commission, essentially tabling deliberations and not scheduling a public hearing so the commission can visit the language and discuss regulations that they would like to see in place. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So,
I see John's not real excited about it. He knows how fast we move.
Oh, and that's part of the reason.
Just look at Mr. Graham's recommendation, it looks like 3 items, and he would have been happy. And I don't know why we don't address those 3 items.
well, I think that we can address those items, and we may come up with some additional language that would be a benefit to, other citizens in the township that we
I agree, Rick.
may want to proceed.
We're doing this, Rick, because we have an event center that's approved.
Right.
We have a 20 by 20 pavilion, and I've been working for 2 years to try to get it approved. And that's all we're doing,
Yeah,
is approving 20 by 20 pavilion. And we're gonna go through this process, which township needs to do to help enhance agriculture. But you can see where I'm sitting.
I do. I mean, I've not been in your exact seat, but I know that, yeah, I know that this is, there are costs associated with everything, and we want to move this along as quickly as we can, but I think we want to make sure we're doing it right. I'm not saying that, 2.5 years from now, we're having a public hearing. I think that we just need to, do you think that we should have a workshop meeting prior to you getting information out to the, concerns out to the contractor, or, but before you contact Beckett Rader?
Oh, sorry.
Do we need to distill our thoughts a little bit more than we have tonight?
Or do you want to talk to the town board before we can go that far?
I kind of want to, option C, all of the above. I think all of them do need to happen simultaneously. I would recommend possibly, a special meeting at a date to be determined, which will be noticed appropriately in accordance with the Open Meeting Act. Perhaps a workshop meeting, not a special meeting. And, perhaps that date can be agreed upon by, if Beckett and Rader does agree to assist the township with this language,
Okay,
they could be present for that date,
so, but feasibly.
sometime in June.
Sometime in June, right, okay. Right, because we're almost out of May, so.
Yes.
Rick, can I ask a
Yes.
question? They were just, Mr. Gallagher, you were just saying that you have a 20 by 20 building, that's all you wanted approved? I thought we were talking about a barn also being
And if
put
I
there.
may, the land use permit and even an aerial of the site, it's over 500 square feet. Not
I'm just asking, I was under the
I'm sorry,
impression,
23 by 23. But no, that's what we currently have.
but that's why I'm asking, is your vision to be done at that? Or are you looking at putting a barn up? See, this is the transparency needs to be here for us to understand what your vision is. If you can't be honest with us and tell us that you're looking at just a 23 by 23, but now you see what I'm saying?
No,
You
that's
s-
what we currently have as a violation, it's 23 by 23.
Okay, but,
We have plans, absolutely.
Yeah.
but when you want us to approve this tonight, it's based on the 23 by 23. But we're looking at the vision of your barn, your expansion. So that is, this is why we have to consider changing the text. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Again, so first and foremost, the township needs to, decide if it wants special, use events. It sounds like the commission wants to proceed with that. That's fine. What the Gallaghers want to do really shouldn't necessarily be taken into consideration when the township is preparing text or when the Gallaghers are preparing text. The processes are different. It's helpful to know, but the township should not be approving language based on what somebody wants to do. It's how it will impact the natural environment, the neighbors, the land, the community at large.
I agree, I'm sorry, but I agree, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time on a 23 by 23 foot building. That's what I'm trying to say.
This would be sort of beyond,
Yep.
a little bit beyond that. And I know that sometimes it's handy to have like the applicant's entire vision, but I think we have to be respectful of the amount of time they put into it and the expense. And I know typically we've not required a lot of as-built drawings for a conceptual discussion because those are expensive to produce. And I think most applicants want to get a sense of our direction before they would jump into more expense for renderings. But to summarize, I believe that what we are undertaking is the development of an ordinance carefully designed to look at the events centers in the Ag District in Elmwood Township. And I think if the ordinance is well-written and carefully designed, then it will be hopefully an asset to applicants and not a hindrance.
And to the community at
And to the
large.
community, correct, yes. in terms of like a special meeting, once you've made a contact with Beckett Rader, do you want to just get an email out to us seeing what?
I'd call around with a date.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have our regular scheduled meeting on the 20th. So I mean, I don't like back-to-back meetings. I want to avoid that in the future, but you know, perhaps later in that week or the week before.
Okay.
That would be my ideal. I mean, it's one of those things I mean, now that we want to move forward, that's fine. I want to move forward quickly. But I also want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I'll get to it in staff comments, but we have 6 applications that we'll need to review and have
Okay.
meetings on.
Any other, Fred, do you have any other questions for us, or John? Any?
No, appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you for your patience.
So we're patient, we're just trying to do the right thing, and get ourselves full performance, is really what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Because we have another application coming to you in a month,
Okay.
and we don't want to appear to be deceptive in any
No,
way, shape,
no, no,
or
no,
form.
no, 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 and so,
And it has all of the renderings that you're looking for, and you'll like them.
good, good. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Excellent, thank you.
So, moving to item H, discussion on zoning ordinance. Any, nothing?
Sir,
Actually-
Oh,
do you feel like we handled C thoroughly enough that we closed that out? Do we need to make a motion there somehow to?
I mean, it's my understanding that, you know, again, we're tabling discussion, we're going to schedule a workshop, all parties will hopefully be there at the end of June. I don't think a motion is necessary for that. The motion, I believe, would be more necessary if we were scheduling a public hearing, on whether or not to move forward, yeah.
I just don't want to be subject to.
Yeah, oh, I hear you.
oh, thank you for
Mhm.
comments from the chair. Thank you for your preparation and your readiness for tonight's meeting. Thank you for I know you've spent a lot of your time working on this, and I really appreciate your efforts, and just my sincere thanks for your dedication to the commission. Looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow.
6:30 tomorrow?
6:30,
Right, yeah.
yes, next
Down here,
door,
yeah.
next door. So, item J, comments from the planning commissioners?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. I think everybody had some really valid points in regards to what is happening there, but, I mean, things to me that take precedence when we're talking about a huge change or shift in text amendment are things like within the event center. We don't have a noise ordinance, we don't have a fire code in the township. Those 2 things, I think, should be well into place before we are approving things like potentially major event centers happening on what could potentially be a large chunk of agricultural land within the township.
Good points, and I think oftentimes we can include some of those within the language of the ordinance. And noise ordinances are really kind of, they're challenging because the county doesn't have one, and
Enforcement.
Because the last time this came up, I did some research and looked at companies that come in and do ambient sound measurement, and there are court cases over the level of calibration and accuracy of their equipment. So I mean, things like that can get a lot more complicated than you might expect. But I think we'll have to have a discussion on that at the when we're talking about the ordinance. But thank you for bringing that up. Comments from staff?
Well, I already said it, but So I have received to date 6 applications for either site plan review, special use permit, and a couple of those include multiple uses within that application. As of now, I've reviewed 5 of those applications, progress. All of them, I'm still waiting for them to be deemed complete. 3 of them I suspect will be able to be on, okay, maybe 2, possibly on the June agenda. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, I kind of knew that they were coming, and then they all kind of came at once. So just be aware, it's one of those things where I will be working with our chair to make sure our agendas are not overburdened, because I do not want to have 4 applications on one night. I don't think that would be conducive to anybody. So.
I think that's prudent. And I know that when the applicant drops their document package off and their check, hopefully they understand that as an appointed body, we sort of have to take into account what people do in their outside lives, and we just, are not into having serial meetings for long periods of time.
And, yeah, that's all I had. See you guys tomorrow, 6:30.
It's now time for public comment, and even though there's no public, I will open the second portion of public comment at 8:56. And seeing no one coming forward, as there is no one in the audience, close public comment at 8:56, and we are at adjournment and need a motion to do so.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and
So
support
quick.
to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:57 PM. Thank
I think
you.
it's Friday.